Facebook was the company, Meta was the company that pioneered the whole private company RSUs, which the entire Valley kind of has adopted as a compensation tool. So they just blazed that trail, and we had to figure things out as we went along. So really, it was really exciting to be a part of that and to, kind of see their massive growth since IPO. I was extraordinarily lucky to be a part of that team because within that team, I was challenged and learned so much, not only within the equity space itself, but with, how to interact with business partners. They had incredible employees who demanded the best. And so you always had to be on. There were a number of challenges. Part of it, was why Facebook decided to implement RSUs. But there was an issue at the time of people selling their shares on the secondary market. And so that was a big issue. One time I received a letter from, I think somebody's grandmother, it felt like, who said, so-and-so sold me these shares and now I'm an owner of Facebook shares. Where do I go to get them and sell them? And it was just sort of like, oh no, this is massive fraud So it's sort of like those things were kind of crazy days, I felt. But some of the challenges were, again, for the non-US employees, was understanding the value of their equity. I showed up in Dublin one time to work with colleagues, and I literally had an employee going, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with these things. I get a little notification that I got an RSU, but I don't even know what this means. So that really put things in perspective of how we need to meet people at their level as far as equity education, because, valuing your compensation is such a huge, important part of equity. When a company is of that size, you have to kind of do a multi-pronged approach. Some people prefer self-help. So make sure the materials that you're posting on the company intranet or wherever you're posting these things are accessible and make sense, and very clear cut. We also offer other resources. Maybe you're partnering with, a tax or financial advisor group. Companies have done that, or with the broker that is, once you're a public company, perhaps they can kind of step in to offer education resources. But we also produced a lot of videos at Facebook. There was a time when we had these foxes come onto campus and they had kits, and it was just really cute. So we had the Facebook foxes kind of presenting equity. So we made little cartoons and stuff like that. So we tried many different things to engage our employee base during my time at Facebook. And we also did, on-site visits to our major offices and held like one-on-ones, and also did webinars in local time as well to help educate the employees. So we tried many different things just to make sure that we were giving people an opportunity to learn whichever way they wanted to learn about their equity. I personally believe that equity is a great compensation and retention tool. With equity, you align the interests of the individual, the worker, the employee, with that of the overall company. So my contributions to the company help grow the company and make it more successful. And because I'm helping it make it more successful, I get to enjoy in the rewards of that, when the company is public and when the shares are freely tradable on the stock market. Likewise, if the company's not doing so well, it's going to hurt me, in my pocketbook as well, because the shares aren't worth as much as they used to. So that might motivate me to kind of rally everybody and then work together. So I think employee ownership is such a valuable experience that, luckily for a lot of us in Silicon Valley, we get to participate in. I feel as though in early stage private companies, the understanding of equity is definitely people who have experienced it before. They know exactly, what they're in for. Usually they're the more senior people or the hired guns who come in, like the new CFO or something. They're very aware of what equity compensation is. But maybe the the analyst level or fresh out of college engineer, or that this might be new to them and they're like, well, I don't know. So you have the, you know, total opposites of understanding about equity compensation in a private company. Whereas in a public company, people have a general idea. They're getting, every quarter the RSUs vest, and then they get, you know, a payout basically. So with that, at private companies, especially with people who are newer to the workforce, you definitely have to explain what this could mean. And a lot of people have some idea because they've watched movies or something, or watched that show Silicon Valley. So they have an idea, but there's also that unglamorous side of it, like taxation, or what does it mean to exercise your stock options, things like that. What are the tax implications? So there's that disparity between the senior level people and the newbies, for sure. So what I do see as a trend is that it is true over the past 10 years or a little bit more that these private companies are staying private longer. So a lot of employees get a little antsy because sometimes they've been at a company for 10 years and they have seen no liquidity. So with that, comes secondaries that, are happening with private companies. There was a moment when, so for example, there's this new thing somewhat new about ELRs, so that, early lockup release. So traditionally there's a 6-month lockup, but because employees often going, well, we don't get to take part in that IPO bump because we're blocked from trading. So that is often a part of the IPO process now, is negotiating an ELR and what the parameters of that is. Liquidity is the name of the game, especially when you're a company that's, well-funded and you don't have a need to go public. And I often find that sometimes companies who are well-funded, the impetus for going public is for the employees, because they've been waiting for this exit. And so that might be the reason, a large reason why many companies go public, because they just want to give their employees liquidity. I think it definitely is a motivator. I don't know many people, at least out here, like in tech, that would go, give me cash instead, equity, everybody wants equity. Every, C-suite senior level person who gets hired onto the company, they're negotiating a large equity package. It's always equity, right? So, and that's great though, because clearly when they're negotiating a large equity package, they have confidence that this company is going to do well. So that's a really good indicator. And I think people see that and they're like, oh, okay, maybe I should be asking for more equity, compensation review time and whatnot. So I do think equity is a large motivator. For me personally, I do see equity comp more valuable than a cash, bump during those review cycles. So it definitely motivates me, because if you're at the right company, that could change your life. I think ease of use of the platform for the equity platform for early stage, startups, it's incredibly important. From an administration standpoint, you definitely want to make sure you're getting all of your share ownership, your grants, any investors in, and you want that to be accurate. That's so important, because these are the owners of your company, right? And you want to know, what their stake is, what if they're preferred, what it translates into, if there is, say, God forbid, like a liquidation of some sort, what's the order preference? All of those are so important. And it's also leverage for you as, a founder of a company, to be able to negotiate additional rounds. So you're prepared to go, here's my cap table. It's clean, it's good. Here's the information. And that clean data is definitely powerful. For the employee user who are interacting with their compensation, if they have a tool in which they kind of understand what their equity is potentially worth, or as you get new 409A and see that value grow, how more motivating is that to see, like, wow, I had this little grant, but, now it's worth this and it keeps growing. And that's definitely a motivator. And it's a motivator for me to tell my friends, you should come join this company, help with recruitment. So having that easy to understand and easy to access for the employees as well as the administrators of the plan is incredibly important. If you have an AI within the company that's walled off, you can use it as, first tier of employee questions because that might be incredibly reliable. So, that cuts down on your team's work of, having to answer a ticket, and they can focus on more escalated items that require a bit more brain power to kind of answer for employees. So I think AI is going to be a really valuable tool in the world of equity administration in the future for sure. I'm going to say something that I might not regret, but I might be proven wrong later. But I find that in this industry, in kind of the banking world, the financial world, that at least here in the United States, you don't want to adopt things too quickly. It's usually the maverick companies like the Robin Hoods, and that they come in and they're throwing all the old rules out the window, and then and then the larger institutions kind of start following suit. But there is still this cautiousness because, this industry is heavily regulated and we don't want to run afoul of that. That being said, in my own personal life, as far as what AI can do for me in equity administration, I'm already kind of thinking forward to kind of think about how these tools can help me administer a program, how it can help me create content for our employees in a way that I might not be able to, I don't speak French fluently, so perhaps AI can help me translate a lot of my content for education purposes in local languages. And I think that is incredibly powerful.